here's the overview of what we're going to do today. Um, Welcome and introductions, which Jamie just did. Talk a little bit about the challenges of back to school. Give a little brief overview of CheckIn AI, and then I'm really going to focus on giving demos of how to use CheckIn AI to identify gaps in student knowledge or class knowledge. And then we'll have extra time at the end for questions and answers. So let's talk about back to school. I was in the classroom for many, many years. And that first day, that first week was a really exciting time, but also a really hectic time. When the kids came in, I was all smiles and really excited to have them. But in the back of my head, I was going crazy because there was so much stuff to do between classroom setup, all the paperwork, all the parent communications, the meetings, and the lesson planning, and gathering time to gather information about my students. That was really low on the list. But the truth is, when you're starting a new school year or just starting a new curriculum, every curriculum assumes students come with a certain set of knowledge and skills and processes mastered or almost mastered. When the reality is, that's not true. Students have varying degrees of this knowledge or not knowledge at all, or they don't remember anything. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today, how we can use CheckIn AI to sort of identify those gaps in knowledge early on instead of like weeks into the school year or months. So what is CheckIn AI and why did I start creating it? Well, being in the classroom, one of my frustrations is often what happened is I measured things that were easy to measure. What do I mean by that? You measure things that like are more memorization based, less problem solving based. They're easy to measure. That's what happens in schools. It's the reality. Whether you want it to be or not, it is the reality. And what I found though is one of the ways to truly understand a student's understanding or deep understanding of a concept or a skill was to have a personalized one-on-one conversation, which is logistically impossible with a class, right? What do the other students do? You don't have time to have even a 1-minute conversation with every student in your class. So that's why I created CheckIn AI. I wanted a way to evaluate and document deep understanding of students through personalized conversations. So let's talk about the types of knowledge that we're talking about here. And there's 3 types. There's content, processes, and skills. And we often focus over here on the content, but prior knowledge of processes and skills are just important for student success. And I'm going to give some demos today of sort of addressing all 3 of these types of knowledge. So now we're going to dive into the meat of the webinar, where we're going to talk about the art of creating a check-in. If you've used AI before, whether it's ChatGPT or Claude, you know there's something called prompt engineering. The way you word your prompt affects how effective the output is. And that's the case with CheckIn AI as well. However, we've done a lot of the heavy lifting for you so that it produces good results, but with a little bit of art, you can make them produce even better results. So let's start with the different check-in types. I'm really excited to announce, if you've used CheckIn AI before, you know there was one check-in type. It was a powerful where you enter topic and guiding questions. That's still there. But we have just launched, and it was on Friday, and it's live now, 5 check-in types. And each check-in type is specifically designed for that task. We have the check-in type, which is sort of what was on there before if you used it. We have an exit ticket check-in type, which asks one question. And we have a pre-assessment check-in type, which focuses on learning objectives. And then we have a reflection CheckIn Type, which works on asking questions and see how students reflect on their learning or on a project, and reading comprehension, CheckIn Type, which I'm really excited about and is in beta right now, but still live. And I'm going to show you different examples of all these CheckIn types with different subjects, different use cases to figure out what fits your need best. All right, so let's jump in. This is where it gets fun. So the first thing when you're creating a check-in is it's really important to identify your goal. And as I said, for this webinar, the goal is identify gaps in prior knowledge. You can do a lot more with this, but that's the focus of what this webinar is and explaining how to use it. So for example, let's say you have an upcoming unit about the scientific method, right? Or even better, you're having them do an actual science experiment. You are assuming students understand variables, specifically independent variables within an experiment. So I'm going to share my other screen, which has CheckIn AI right on it. And I created this check-in over here. I pre-created it. I'm going to show it to you, and it's a pre-assessment type. And I'm going to open it up so you can see it. So if you haven't used CheckIn AI in a while, this might look a little different. They're different sections. But every check-in has three basic things: a name, which helps you identify it; a grade level, which helps the AI rate it and also level the text; and maximum questions. I'll talk about maximum questions more in a bit. Now, a pre-assessment, and you can see this is a pre-assessment up here, has two things. One is required, the other is not required. What's required is a learning objective. And this learning objective is used to control the conversation, but also in order to rate this conversation of the student at the end, to give a rating. And I'll show you that. And in this case, it's students will be able to identify independent variables in a simple experiment and explain how a prediction relates to the setup. That's a learning objective. And I could have left it at that, but I put in also a question, because that way the AI will ask that question first and then create follow-ups based on that question. And by putting in a question with a specific example that I'm interested in, I, as the teacher, have more control of how that conversation progresses. And a tip is that with all these, the more precise you make the learning objective, the better it will be, okay? Now, I said I'd get back to max questions. Max questions is a really useful feature that we introduced a while ago, where you can limit the maximum number of questions that the conversation will be for that check-in. Each check-in type has a default, but you can adapt it. So I only have one question here, so I'm going to put it as 4, which allows for 3 follow-up questions. What the max questions really does is, if you've worked with AI, conversations can go on for a really long time. And what max question is, whether the AI thinks it's done or not, it cuts it off so that there's that time limit for those quick conversations and quick check-ins. And it puts you, the teacher, in control of how long this is going to be. So let's say you gave your students that check-in. I did some demos, and you get a report like this with your students. Now, I want to point out a couple things. One student here, this is demo students that I did, they're not real students. One student here canceled their check-in. This was also launched on Friday, where it shows that means they didn't get to the end, or before they got to the end, they closed the window, closed the tab, hit the back button. All right. It still says they completed 2 out of 4 questions, and you can see what they did if you click on it, what they did do, even if it was canceled. The other thing I wanted to note are these rating systems we've updated in the color. I can quickly see here, this student who's in green probably understands independent variables. The one in red had some difficulty. The one in orange also got some things right, some things wrong. May need attention, may not. And the great thing about this is it records the entire conversation. So if you click on this, I can see the feedback from the AI. And for the pre-assessment check-in type, it gives you topics to review and what the student understands. And I can see the entire conversation, okay? And because I asked one question with this one, I can quickly look at the rating for the answer to that first question, which is 1 out of 5, which means, okay, they didn't get it initially, and the AI sort of had to sort of step them through a little bit before they understood it. Okay. All right. So that's an example of a pre-assessment. This next demo I want to show you is something I'm really excited about because I think it can be used for all sort of things, and it's the reading comprehension check-in type. So here we're going to identify gaps in a prior skill. So let's say you want to know if students can summarize a text, all right, which is also a prior skill for a lot of other skills. But let's see it. So let's start. The demo is supposed to be simple. Let's start with finding the main idea of a paragraph. So I'm going to share my screen again to show CheckIn AI. Okay. And I created a finding the main idea check-in, and it's a reading comprehension. And I'm going to edit it so you can see the parts. So here, instead of learning objectives, you actually put the reading material the check-in will cover. And you can copy and paste it, you can format it, and this reading material will be shown to the student, and that's the only thing the check-in conversation will focus on, okay? And that's also the ratings for that check-in will only focus on that content. So this is a really short paragraph about the rainforest and every layer that's is filled with life, and it's about the layers of the rainforest. And I just wrote one question. What is the main idea? And I put the maximum number of questions to 3 because I just have one question. So 2 follow-up. Wanted it quick, sweet, and short. So let's take a look at what a report would look like that. So here's the report again. And again, you can look overall, okay, the majority of my class might need help with this. But I also wanted to point out a couple things about this. I'm going to click on this student here. And you can see the feedback here is strengths, weaknesses, and reading comprehensions could benefit from detail. But what I wanted to show you is the individual rating question. So you can turn on, and I'll show you this later, what students see. You get to see everything on the report, which I'm showing you now, but you can let students see the rating for an individual question or not. You can let them see an example answer, so or not. So for example, what is the main idea of the paragraph? It says it's about the rainforest. Is too broad. It gave it 2 out of 5. And if you click on this, and this is important to explain soon, you can see if it's red, it means it's basically incorrect. If it's 1 red, it means they really didn't try, off topic. 3 means they got it partially correct, and green means it's correct. 4 means it could have been elaborated on or expanded better. 5 is like really good answer. But what's really cool about this, with this rating system, is the AI explains why. So if you open this up to students and show students, let them see that, they can click why and say, like, I don't agree with that. I should have gotten higher. They can actually read or see why the AI rating says the student's answer is partially correct as it identifies the general topic, but it lacks detail about the layers in the interconnected ecosystem. The other thing I wanted to show you with the reading comprehension, which is really exciting, is the AI is not pulling all the data from the internet. So for example, it said, can you tell me more about what the paragraph says regarding the rainforest? And this student said that it's endangered, which is true, but that's nothing. There was nothing about that in the paragraph. So it gave them 1 out of 5 and said the paragraph doesn't mention that. What's also important, as I said, with these ratings is that the teacher is in control. So you can override any of these ratings as the teacher. So if you thought that this actually should be a 3 out of 5, you can click on the human, change it, and say, I want that to be 3 out of 5. Because there aren't student accounts, the students don't see that, but you have it for your documentation. And where it's really useful is for the overall rating. So let's say you look at this and you're like, actually, this should be a 1 out of 5, not a 2 out of 5. And you bring that down. It updates it on the main page. And if you export this for like grading as a CSV, that rating will export as well that you updated. All right. So that's really exciting. I think reading comprehension is really exciting. You can actually, and we're still testing this, put in the name of a book and a chapter, so not the full text, and the AI will ask about that book and chapter. We're still testing that. It's in beta, but it's something you can play around with to see if it works.
Colin, related to that, there was a question about whether there is a maximum amount of text that you can put into that first box for it.
Really good question. That's actually a really good question. I don't think I've limited it right now. There is a limit on the AI backend, so I will get back to you with the actual limit. In my testing, I haven't hit that yet. So I'll get back to you on that. It's a really good question. Okay, what screen am I sharing? Okay, right here. All right, here's another interesting use case, right? So we talk about like beginning of the year, so there's some prior knowledge that you need. What about if you just want to know what they remembered from the previous day, right? They come into class, you want to see, do they remember what I taught yesterday so I can build on it? All right. And I did this with actually an exit ticket because you can use an exit ticket at the end of class or the beginning of class. An exit ticket is really cool because it's the simplest one that you can make. And this is about the American colonies and their reasons for founding. So I'm going to click edit here. And on an exit ticket, the only information you really need is that one question. And here I put, yesterday we learned about why different colonies were started. In your own words, explain one main reason why a colony was established and give an example of a colony that shows this reason. And I limited it to 3 max questions. If you don't want the AI to ask any follow-up questions, you just want like a quick rating of their answer of that question, you can limit it to 1 question. That's a tip in this case. So what you could do if you had done this is as students come in and they do this, you could go to your session report and look like, oh, okay, reload this as they're coming in, as they finish it. Be like, oh, okay, students got this or they don't. And I want to explain how the overall rating works for exit ticket because each check-in type works differently. It's customized. So the overall rating here is designed to see how the conversation answers that one question because there's no learning objectives, there's no topic. It's just how does that overall conversation demonstrate understanding or knowledge of that original exit ticket question. The other thing that I didn't mention before that I think is important to note is this overall rating that's up here is not an average of the individual ratings. All the individual ratings are looking at is the question and the answer and how well it answers that question. The overall rating is the AI looking at the entire conversation and evaluating it based on, in this case, how well it answered the exit ticket question. show or shows understanding of the exit ticket question. Okay, this one I'm really excited for because I taught math for many years, and I find math is really hard to talk about by typing into a computer. You write math out. However, one of the biggest challenges, even I feel like through college level um, math, is students struggle with word problems, right? So let's say you're doing a fractions unit, but there's a ton of word problems or application problems. One of those prior skills, and this is really designed for younger kids, but middle school could work for this too, is identifying the key parts of a word problem. And this is where I use that reading comprehension check-in again, but I used it for math. So, for example, here it is. So this is the same reading comprehension check-in. And instead of like a paragraph, like I would in language, but in language, I put in a word problem about Samantha baking cookies for a school fundraiser. And I asked um, 4 questions. What is the question the word problem is asking? What are the key pieces of information you need to solve this word problem? Is there any relevant information in this word problem? Irrelevant, sorry. Is there any irrelevant information in this word problem? Because students really struggle with that. And how many steps do you think it will take to solve this word problem? And what's cool about this is once you have this, you can, here's another tip. And you have those questions, but you want to do another word problem, you can click on this and you can duplicate it and it makes a copy. And then you can just edit the word problem, but the questions will stay the same. Right. So here's another check-in type that I haven't just talked about yet, and that's reflection. So let's say you have a long-term project. There's a lot of processes and skills are assumed that students are able to take a long-term project, break it into smaller parts, right? That is not a reality for many students. That's not a safe assumption. So, oops, wrong button. That's where the reflection check-in comes in. And here's an example I have right here. And here it's just putting in questions. And the overall rating will be based on how well did they reflect. And here's a tip for creating these reflection check-ins. If it's about a project, the first question saying, what project are you working on, is important because it gives the AI context for the rest of the questions that it's answering. So I have, what project are you working on? What part of your project are you going to work on today and why? What information or materials do you need to complete this part of your project? And how long do you think it will take to complete this part of the project? Some time management skills in there as well. So if you look at the report here, for example, one is rated 2 out of 5 and one is 4 out of 5. And if you click this, the difference is the 4 out of 5 is doing more specifics. They're saying, I'm working on my I'm designing a Mars colony. I'm going to work on calculating the price out of the living quarters. And the individual ratings here are just how well did they answer the question. It's not about right or wrong because there's no content. It's not right or wrong. It's about, and if you don't want to be biased by them as the teacher, you can even hide them. This one that got 2 out of 5, you can see spent less time, first of all. And they said they kept it very broad. What do you need? I need paper and pencil. I'm working on the designing. So it wasn't very specific, and that's why it rated, and it wasn't a good reflection. of it. So if you have a lot of students doing it, you can quickly identify which students might need support and which don't. Okay. Now, this is the last demo I have for you. And it's how to identify gaps in prior knowledge of a general topic. And this uses the standard check-in that's been built in. That's really powerful. So for example, in this example, I'm teaching a unit about the water cycle, and I want to know what they knew about water molecules. And there are a couple things I want to show you about this type. First of all, it takes in a topic and guiding questions. We now require guiding questions because it helps focus the conversation. We found from talking to other teachers that it really benefits them. And in this case, it's what atoms make up water molecule and how many of each are there. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a sample. So if I look at this report, what this check-in and all the check-ins do is they do not assume knowledge. What do I mean by that? The first question here was what atoms make up a water molecule and how many of each are there? And I put an H2O because, hey, that's technically correct, right? But I could have just memorized it and regurgitated it. Gave me 3 out of 5 because it's partially correct. And it says, great, can you tell me what the H and O stand for and how many of each are in a water molecule? So it won't let me just memorize and sort of regurgitate that memorization. Same further down here, where it asks, what do you think causes water droplets to stick together on a window or leaf? And if they respond, it's sticky, gave them 2 out of 5. And it says, interesting thought. Can you explain what you mean by sticky? What might be happening between the water droplets? So you can't just regurgitate. It's sticky is something that it said, or it's just from the question, right? They're sticky, it sticks together. So that's all the demos I have. That's all the demos I have today. I did want to briefly mention how do we present AI tools to students, because that's important as well. I think it's important to be transparent when you're using AI tools such as CheckIn AI or any other AI tool that you're transparent with students. Tell them it's AI. In the case of CheckIn AI, you can tell them you see all their responses, every one of their responses. Keep them honest. You also can't paste, I didn't show this, but you can't paste, students can't paste responses into CheckIn AI, so they can't just copy from somewhere else. They'd have to retype it, which they can do, but it takes a little more work. I think it's important to preview what AI is and is not with students. It's not a human, it's different. It's a statistical model predicting the next best word. And it's really important to demo the AI tool as a teacher, especially if you're turning on the ratings for students or the example answers. You want them to know, how do you use this? What does it mean? And this isn't the case for CheckIn AI, where it's much more controlled by the teacher. But if you can open a conversation, especially for like higher students in high school and college, of some scenario-based ethics discussions. When is it appropriate to use AI? When is it not? What should we use it for? From there. And that's all I have for you today. If there are any more questions that I didn't answer, put them in the chat. Otherwise, thank you for coming. And you can check out CheckIn AI for free. Sign up for free. Some of the full disclosure, some of the types, the reflection and reading comprehension are on the paid plans. But reach out if you have any questions, concerns. Thank you for coming and have a nice day.